Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Bobby, how are you doing?
Great.
Lovely, lovely backdrop there you've got. And this is your office at Circuit of the Americas, is it not?
It is, but I think if I knew what I was doing, I should blur the background. It sounds like I should have an F1 car behind me.
Well,
No.
I mean, we will talk a lot about F1 in this chat, but obviously COTA isn't just an F1 venue, so we can also talk about some of the other strengths of what you do. But let's just start with the right here and now. Apart from the fact that you're graciously giving up some time to chat to us here, what's on your plate right now at this time of year as chairman of Circuit of the Americas?
Well, our goal is to program things year round and have reason for people to come every month and every day. And so today, when I look outside, we have Skip Barber on the track, but off the track, we have our winter festival light drive-through that happens. And we draw 120,000 people over between now and New Year's. They come to the circuit just to celebrate, the holidays, spend time with family, and go through an incredible light show and display, and then gather in what we use as our main exhibit area in the Grand Plaza. We turn that into kind of a winter wonderland with kids rides and food and fun. And so really what we focus on is just, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do each month to stay relevant and stay attached to our community? Because that's a big part of it. A large part of our support comes from Austin and from our neighbors. And so we really want to make sure they find something to do all the time.
Well, dare I ask, off the back of what I imagine has been some pretty huge growth for the venue in terms of some of the events you've hosted in more recent years, have you seen then that other smaller events that you put on and extra activations become a bit more easy to sell to people because the awareness of COTA has grown as well?
Unquestionable. When people, it's one of the areas we want to focus on the most in the coming years, which is just giving recreational, I guess I'd say, not the people who are the most fervent drivers and racers and want to touch the track for that reason, but people who have become curious about it and know of COTA now and want to come out and just spend a couple hours, give them a driving experience. Our karting track, for example, is just packed. It books up days in advance and it sells out every weekend. And it's because of the brand and the awareness, and people want to come and be near COTA and be a part of it and see it, whether that's riding bicycles. We have over 1,000 people that come now on Tuesday nights. Those aren't necessarily, race enthusiasts, but they're part of what I think has become our brand and the recognition that it has.
Well, that karting track, I can attest to, having been around it a couple of times, is great fun. And the boom, from my perspective, in Formula One that's seen such huge crowds, there's a downside because you need that space for parking. So I don't get to go karting during the race week. But it was only just over a month ago that you were hosting 440,000 people for the United States Grand Prix over that weekend. And it was the 10-year anniversary to really mark that milestone. So how did this year's event go from your perspective?
This was our best event. Even though the crowd was the biggest, we did the best job. We're a venue, we're a theater as we look at it. And it took us years to really realize that. And so our job is to put on a great event. It's not to put on the great show, right? We have to do things right for the fans and create a facility that works, that makes it easy for people to get around, that doesn't have them stand in lines for food, doesn't have hours and hours to get in and out of the parking lots. I mean, those are the practical things that we have to do. And I think our team did the best job they've ever done. And they've got experience now. And we learn a little bit from each year. And in fact, we sit down the week after F1 and really start looking at next year's Grand Prix. And what mistakes did we do? Obviously, you always focus on what did you do wrong. And our list this year, fortunately, was a little shorter. And it's all things I think we can fix.
Well, you mentioned that your whole team has experience now. I mean, last year's event in 2021 was also over 400,000 people. I mean, we're talking of numbers that are among the biggest of each event on the whole Formula One calendar, which is quite some statement. But it hasn't always been that easy, has it, for COTA? It doesn't just happen overnight like that. So can you take us back to maybe the start of the whole project when you were first involved, but maybe in a different way, and the vision before the inaugural event in 2012?
Sure. I think when we got involved, we looked at this twofold. We said, what can this do? Can we make money, first of all? Is this going to be a profitable venture? Because we've got to be able to make a profit to sustain the business. And the other was, what can it do for our community in Austin and really Texas? And the goal was to, with the state as a partner, is to bring people to Texas and attract them from out of state. And so we had to build an event. And I think early on, I was really an investor and a believer and a cheerleader in this. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really jumped in from an operator standpoint. So in building the original team that looked at this, I think we hired people and we thought about this as a race. And we hired people with experience behind the wheel or in the garages, or really people who are fans of the sport. And what we should have looked at it as, and what I think we've done right, is you really look at it as an event. And you look at it as, we're building advocates and we're not building the sport. And I think there's a big difference. And I think it took us a while to realize that, which is, you have to think about whose job is it to build the sport. And I look at it similar to a movie theater. Whose job is it to promote the movie? Is it Hollywood or is it the local theater? And in many ways, although there are 20-something theaters around the world now, we don't have the wherewithal and the budget to build the sport. So we had to build an event, and we had to build advocates one at a time. And so by putting on a good event, I think we built an audience that allowed us to get to 400,000. I think we may talk a little bit about Netflix and how you go from building advocates to building fans of the sport itself. And that happened over time, but we obviously made mistakes. And after you have a first year event, you think you've got something that's spectacular and that you're going to ride that wave. And you find out probably in year 3 or year 4, whether you have people who are they just checking it out because it's on the bucket list? It's a check the mark and I did it once, or am I really interested in coming back and why would I get off my couch and go see it? Right. And so we found in year 3 and year 4, that the number of pure fans we really had for the sport probably wasn't going to sustain us to year 10. And so we really dug in and took a look and thought about what we do to make sure we're sustaining. And I think we've done an okay job of that now.
What were then maybe some of the things that you had to do to start to, I guess, evolve the event and evolve the way that you ran the circuit to ensure that would happen? Because like you say, we will get onto Netflix at some stage, but this was all happening long before Netflix was a topic that people would talk about.
Yeah, we first had to find a way for the race fan to be able to bring a friend or family member who wasn't already a fan of the sport, and in sort of a roundabout way, create the fan. And so we wanted to see our ticket sales, and I think probably mentioned, but we needed to go from, say, 2 tickets per transaction to 3. Because if we got from 2 to 3, it was probably because that person became an advocate and said, I went to something that you should check out. And maybe you're coming for a different reason that's not F1, first of all, it's the entertainment factor. And so really, because we have the campus that we do, and because we already have a music venue on site and we do 30 shows a year with Live Nation, we talk about the full year. We had a good team in place for doing other things. And we started incorporating things that we do the rest of the year and bringing them forward to that weekend. So if it's music, and we brought in the 20 bands and we brought in some headliners, because it did bring in a different audience. And we were highly criticized for it at first, because I think the racing purists may have seen it as an insult, and it wasn't meant as an insult. It was meant as a way for you to say, I want to bring my family member who hasn't come before, and I'm going to give him or her a reason to join me. And in doing so, we brought more families out, and we brought, I think we just created a reason, and that in turn created fans and created advocates for our event. And that's why the event grew on its own.
Well, on that line then, whereabouts in the 10-year history of the event did it really feel like that was starting to happen? When did you start going, yeah, we're starting to build something here?
Yeah, when we had a real low point, when we had unprecedented floods. And we found out that we didn't do simple things like build good concrete walking paths for people. We didn't have good transportation plans for what happens if an area floods and you can't get people through there. I mean, we really had an extreme test. And so we dug in. We had to make a big capital investment into how do you make the campus work for all types of weather? How do you, and then in a sunny year, you find out you need more shade. So how do you get more shade? How do you get more safe walking? And it's just logistics. Like nobody wants to go home with muddy shoes. We hadn't really focused on that too much. And so I think we did that. And then we brought in the Taylor Swift. That was a great turning point for us to bring in a younger audience. And then we added these villages and other entertainment from the time you walk in the gates, at 8 or 9 a.m. There's something to go see and do. And so we continue to fill in. We brought in people that were from the entertainment industry of just let's create something that if you're not a race fan, you're going to have something that you said you enjoyed that day and it was a reason for you to go. And in turn, it took a couple of years, probably 2017 or 2018, we saw the numbers really starting to come back up just before the pandemic. And it was coming back up in more transactions or more tickets purchased per transaction, which said we're doing something right. So we built on that.
And that certainly was before the first season of Drive to Survive had come out for people to sort of latch onto in that way as well. There's been a lot of talk about the boom in Formula One being down to Netflix or the Netflix effect. But as you've just outlined, COTA was there long before and picking up the sport at a time where it had actually really struggled in America and had a pretty poor history or latter history at Indianapolis. So how important do you think the circuit was and what you guys have done to Formula One having a platform to grow from in America?
Well, just because we gave the entertainment fans something doesn't mean we didn't have the best venue for the Formula One fan and for the race. So just by virtue of probably in 2009 or 2010, when the land was picked as a right place for the track, rather than say, this is the place to build your Formula One track, as the case may be in many government-sponsored circuits, we were able to work with the architects and say, there's some interesting topography available in this part of the city or this part of the neighborhood, sort of. And we really got down to working with the engineers to create something that the F1 fan would realize this is unique. Like to have a view of 8 or 10 turns from here. And I went to the race in Dallas in I think 83. Okay. And it's flat. Dallas is flat. Fair Park venue where we had it. You talk about the kind of the failure at Indianapolis you speak of. It was worse. This year the track melted, but also we could barely see anything but the car zipping by us. Okay, you couldn't see multiple turns. So right off the bat, we realized, well, how are we gonna make it so the F1 fan says that place is great? And so we worked with Tilka, the architects, and said, let's use these hills. Let's make it so a GA guest has incredible access and can wander the entire track and see different turns. And so I think we've made something that's exciting for the fans. And in doing so, we also didn't forget about the drivers. And you had great input from people who did have terrific experience in racing, from both the engineers and the driver's side. And we were able to really locate the circuit and orient it so that the drivers would come back and say, you've taken some of the best features of other circuits around the world and you've added some of your own. There's nothing wrong, the most sincere form of flattery is maybe when you
Imitation.
copy. Yeah, is imitation. And so I think there's nothing wrong with borrowing some of the great features of other circuits, combining them here and then adding your own. And so for that reason, we've got something the drivers really like. And that formula really worked. And so I think that helped really launch us to something that gave us the foundation to grow on.
Well, it's funny you should say about imitation and the most sincere form of flattery, but you must have seen, I mean, I've become aware of it traveling the world to every Grand Prix, that what you guys do and the added entertainment that goes on, and very much an American style focus on a sporting event of making sure people have a good time over and above the actual track action, has been replicated now much more regularly around the world. Do you see that and think, yeah, that was, we helped provide a blueprint, even if no one directly comes to you and says, oh, thanks for that?
Yeah. I think we know that's the case, and we're happy to, and we do like the calls. The promoters, and we're talking that even F1 promoters and MotoGP promoters, maybe a little less so, but we really have a good network of people that share best practices, and we're happy to share those best practices. And it's great when people emulate what you're doing. A lot of the problems or the challenges with other venues is just you can't retrofit, right? We were lucky because we had these 1,300 acres, and you have the hills and the grass and the room to spread out, and land was fairly inexpensive when we did this. So we have a lot more flexibilities than some of the others, but I think everyone's realizing that there's some good things to borrow from here.
No, absolutely. And it's sort of spoken through the figures of or numbers of fans that are coming through to each race, and the fact that it does keep growing. But at the same time, have you seen the demographic of fan change that comes to the US Grand Prix? Because there's been a lot of focus on the way the sport's been growing in the States.
Absolutely. I think that's known by the industry and by TV and everyone else, and that it's a much younger crowd. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to Netflix. You can, absolutely. We hit the younger crowd, and a lot of people thought we went too young when we brought in some of the acts that we did in terms of the music. And I'm talking about the music a lot because it seemed to be a known impact, but as you know, Chris, if you've been here, is we've got 3 miles to wander, and there's villages and other things to experience. But continually the age dropped, but Netflix, it made it to people's living rooms, and you've seen a shift in demographic of both younger and more females.
And did that then change what you have to do with the event? Did you have to start to tailor it differently to that crowd, or did you find you were already catering for them and that they then discovered you?
We're already very immature. So in my focus, no. I think it already existed. And I think the same things that people young at heart and spirit want is the same thing that people that are young in age want.
Well, we've spoken quite a bit about the growth and the changes you've seen over the past 10 years, but it's only this year that you've been joined by another race in the States in Miami. Next year, obviously, Vegas is coming on to the F1 calendar as well. In one sense, you can maybe look at that as competition or a threat. How do you see them? Are they good for you? Are they bad for you? Like, what's your feeling when you see that there's more US-based races on the calendar?
Well, as long as they don't hurt our ticket sales, we love them. And so far, it's been good. I mean, I think we're spread apart from Miami and enough that we can complement each other. And I do think that over time, as I said, we talked about in our first year, we had this, we started up here, and the second year was good. But by the third year, the fans they're really smart, and they're, I think they find what they gravitate, I think, towards what fits them best. And these events are so uniquely different that I think that's to our advantage. And I think the fact that they're not the same, and they're not typical circuits. Miami, the way it's set up, and in the international city that Miami is, it has its own character, and they're still finding their character, and it may take some years of what their ultimate fan is, who that's going to be. And then Vegas is as much about Vegas and the show and the lights and the spectacle. And so I think we'll distinguish ourselves.
I was going to say, can those events almost become a shop window for you? Because, as you put it, I mean, Vegas is just going to be a Formula One race, no support races. It's going to be very much, a Saturday night event where you go out for dinner, you go and watch the race, and then you go out partying, and it's just like any other show in a sense, just a spectacular racing show, which is incredible. But surely that's a taster for some people, isn't it, into the world of Formula One? Are you hoping to maybe hit the more mainstream Grand Prix style event where fans who want to commit a full weekend then turn to you?
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think the promoters there would differ at all. And I think we're built for racing, and you're built for Formula One. And so, I mean that both from the fan standpoint and the driver standpoint. You're built for Formula One fans. This is going to be where people first thought we were straying and we were getting too far away from the true essence and the spirit of being a Formula One fan. When we started adding the entertainment, we're now the closest thing towards pure racing and having the true circuit and really focusing on the race fan. So I think those who really appreciate what's built here and appreciate the skills of the drivers, there's no place that's going to challenge them like this, and there's no place you're going to be able to view the racing like this. So I think we'll stand out.
No, it is a great facility for F1, and I know we've had a couple of questions on the chat about things other than F1, which we will get to in a sec. But I just wanted to throw it forward a little bit before we get to those questions in terms of what's next. I mean, there seems to be a bit of a race developing now between COTA, maybe Melbourne, maybe Silverstone, to be the first race to 500,000 fans through over a race weekend. I mean, is that in your mind too? Would you love to be first to that? And if so, how do you get there?
What a great point of conversation. Really, like a race to the top is good. We can handle it. We need some. I think all we needed this year were some additional roads, and we could have sold those tickets and done that. And so that's a great challenge, and I hope we get to be there first. And I think Melbourne has a similar campus opportunity to us. I think they probably could host a bigger crowd. In our case, the nice thing is right now it just comes down to the state widening a road. We got two main entrances. This year we were able to go up because something so simple as 4 new lanes, and the state knows it's important. So let's get to 500. That's great.
Yeah, it would
be awesome. 3 days. It's over 3 days.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but yeah, from there we can build on to the next milestone, and it's one of the things that working in Formula One is great to see, that the discussions are about growth and new figures being hit and records rather than any more struggles that weren't that long ago that some teams maybe in some venues were facing. But if we make it a bit more generic, then for the track as a whole, it's more than just a one event. So what are you maybe most proud of at COTA?
How did I hit mute by accident? No, I didn't. What are we most proud of? If we step away from F1, I think we're most proud of how the community has related to what we're doing and how we've learned to be a better partner, and how I think my goal is that the people that come here to work every day like coming and look forward to it and don't want to be remote because we can't be remote. So when I really think about what we're most proud of, it's just the fact that we've got people now who've come year after year, and they send us their pictures and we get excited to see it. And they say, this is my, in some cases, 10th Grand Prix. So I think we're most proud of putting on something that people want to come back to, and then being a good partner in the community. And then now seeing, I met a kid 17 years old yesterday in the cafe here. And, he got inspired 8 years ago by coming out, and now he's competing as a racer in events out here on whatever weekends he can. And when you see that, you've sort of launched and inspired someone to join the sport and become part of it. And I think there's so many things, I guess, that I like. When I just think about just yesterday that happened, that kind of thing feels really good.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And we can just hear in the background some of the Skip Barber cars going by. And I imagine for those guys, it must be epic to say they've driven on a Formula One circuit, but also just such a great track to drive. Now, we've spoken a lot about Formula One, so I'm going to turn to one of the questions that's come in from Bruce Martin. So, hey, Bruce, who wants to talk IndyCar, because he said you pursued IndyCar for several years and were successful in getting an IndyCar race in 2019. It was back on the schedule in 2020. Then COVID hit. The race was cancelled and has not returned. So why didn't it work? And do you foresee doing business with IndyCar in the future?
Yeah. So would be happy to do business with IndyCar in the future. One thing about a venue this large is it's very expensive to open the gate. You don't simply open a grandstand. People can come into it because the expectation here is, I want to go see turn 11 and it's 1.5 miles away. And so just from a logistics standpoint, we're probably by far the most expensive venue to open. So that becomes a tough, it's It's a matter of how many tickets you can sell and whether IndyCar can sell enough tickets to come to Austin. And I think right now it probably teeters on the border. And again, it goes back to, are we the theater or are we building the sport? And we have to realize it's not our job to build the sport and the fan base in that way. As much as we'd like to, that's not our job, and we don't have the budget to build it. And as they grow and can fill enough seats here, man, I love IndyCar. My family's from Indianapolis. I grew up with collector's cups just wanting to drink out of because it had all the past race winners. So I'm a huge IndyCar fan. I'd love to see it back here. The numbers just have to work.
That's good to know, Bruce. Thanks for your question. I've got a comment quickly before the final question, just to come in from Cheryl, who says to you that she answered the question about most proud before you did, and was delighted that you gave it, because the people who make COTA happen is very special. And she was saying she's glad to be joining from Alaska, although 5:47 a.m. is an early start to watch this. So we've got some people up very early to hear what you've had to say, which is great to have so many people joining. The other question I'm going to ask to you then is from Phil. Phil Nelly says, can you tell us the importance of involving women in motorsport at COTA? And I mean, I guess we've seen at a top level things like W Series was there a year ago, sadly curtailed their season a bit too early to host the race. It should have been again in Austin this year. But do you see that as an important aspect for the circuit?
Yeah, I think there's only so much we could do, right, to build a fan. Again, this goes back to sort of, can we build the sport or can we build the fan? So I think what we can do is we give women opportunities the same as anyone else. And I love that we see a lot of women out here driving at some of the big club events that you have. We have events on weekends where we'll have 100 different cars driving. It costs $600 to come in and get to drive COTA, which is pretty great. The fact is that the number of women signing up to do that isn't that great. But it would be wonderful. We were disappointed when W Series, if we'd been earlier in the calendar, we would have had that race here. But again, it goes back to financials for those series and whether they can get the sponsors. Right now, they can't be a standalone, sell tickets and expect to race at COTA. But it's obviously important to us. Over half of our workforce is female, and I think, or not over half, but I think it's about half. And so I'd love to see it happen. I don't know. I would like to hear from other people, and you got some smart people that are listening, but I think we're all happy to hear about how can you advance women in motorsports and how can we help that go forward? Because if we don't have the idea, but someone has it, we're certainly, there's no pride in authorship here.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I believe as Francisco pops up, I believe it's one of the panels we've got this week is to discuss women in motorsport. And I think Beth Perez is coming on with some others to really discuss the future in that way.
Well, you're absolutely right. We have two sessions. We had one yesterday with Beth Parera and some very wonderful high executive women on the panel, promoters from the Phoenix Raceway, Julie, and who's going to Chicago next. And so we had a terrific panel yesterday, Bobby, and then we have another one tomorrow with Lynn St. James with a focus on drivers. So we have a lot of promoters this week, a lot of racing series organizer. We'll have the president of IndyCar later today, Jay Fry, who's going to be interviewed by Paul Fanner. But Bobby, thank you very much for being with us today. You're doing a brilliant job at that wonderful racetrack. My first job long time ago back in France was at the French Formula One Grand Prix. So, that's something I enjoy very, very much. So thank you for being with us.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to EPARTRADE.